Good afternoon, and distinguished guests, dear IAC delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. It is once again today my honor and great pleasure to welcome you here in Washington for this new edition of the Global Networking Forum. As we said this morning, the continuous growth in participation and the large number of applications received this year are a clear indication of the high quality and great impact that the GNF has accomplished thanks to a valuable commitment of the IAF community. For this reason, this year again, we are able to present our participants a program composed of more than 50 sessions. In this year's program, I am very pleased to see some of the most recent and stimulating topics being discussed and to see the involvement of numerous stakeholders, experts, and leaders of the space sector. In a nutshell, the GNF continues to be committed to providing an efficient platform to meet, share, and connect, giving speakers and participants the opportunity to showcase their research, results, and latest developments, while providing the audience with the opportunity to learn and keep abreast of the latest space-related events. I believe that the discussions that will take place in this year's GNF will bear fruitful results and will lay the groundwork for future developments and endeavors in the space field. I hope you will find this year's GNF program inspiring, rewarding, and enjoyable, and it is my pleasure to give the floor to Gabriela Arrigo, Vice President, Science and Academic Relations and Global Networking Forum from the IAF. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, dear delegate, dear colleagues and friends, it's my pleasure in my capacity as Vice President for Science and Academic Relations and the Global Networking Forum to welcome you to a new edition of the IAF Global Networking Forum in the 17th International Astronautical Congress in Washington, D.C. As you may know, the number of applications received this year has been particularly high, a testimony that the GNF is growing every year more. This growth is due to your precious support. Today, the GNF represents one of the most successful endeavors of the Federation, used to promote cooperation and exchange knowledge on the advance of space activities. This year's International Astronautical Congress includes a unique and exciting GNF program, covering specific topics of high relevance to the future of space, such as human spaceflight missions, lunar and Mars exploration, space economy, and sustainability of outer space. Indeed, GNF initiative continues to be one of the most important tools for the Federation to foster some of the priority topics, such as connecting and sharing knowledge within the space community and promoting the principle of 3G diversity: gender, generation, geography. I'm confident that also this year, GNF program will be a successful platform where all IC participants will have the opportunity to actively meet, share, and connect. I wish you all a great GNF, and I hope you will make the most of it. So, thank you. And I invite the first GNF. Maria Cristina, please. I invite the speakers on the stage, please.
I think there is a microphone missing for them. Is it coming? Okay. She wants to introduce me, it doesn't matter. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Giorgio Lacrosse, I'm the president of the Italian Space Agency. I'm very pleased to introduce this first GNF this afternoon, which is dedicated to a very important topic, which is Earth observation as a pillar of the space economy and perspective of industrial policy. For Italy, Earth observation is a flagship activity and a pillar of national space economy. Decades of investment allow us to build up a permanent space infrastructure, the Cosmos SkyMed X-band constellation, and a solid ground segment multi-frequency and multi-mission center able to cross-correlate data from different missions and to provide a wide portfolio of products. In parallel, with the preparation of Cosmos SkyMed, a second-generation satellite which will be launched soon, in March we launched the first European hyperspectral mission, so-called PRISMA, and thanks to a series of international agreements, very important for us, we will have access to L-band data from, for example, Salcom of Argentina, ALOS-2 of JAXA, Novasar from the UK Space Agency. On top of that, as member of the European Union and ESA, we are very proud to say that Copernicus has been a groundbreaking for Europe, and its data policy definitely created new market opportunities, in particular for small and medium enterprises, through the development of value-added downstream services and applications. The greater availability of satellite images and their innovative use, combined with ever cheaper processing cost, opens the door for innovation, like artificial intelligence, etc., to deliver always more efficient and focused services. However, the business case of Earth observation is in continuous evolution for many different reasons. We are experiencing a cultural evolution that, of course, implies new priorities. Understanding the new driving parameters in order to provide a proper frame for new initiative and investment is not only an economic challenge. It is actually an institutional responsibility, because Earth observation space economy is an enabler for responding to societal challenges and contributing to smart growth. The Italian Space Agency intends to deep analyze these processes at global level to address targets and issues, and I consider the open discussion that will take place today as a great opportunity to highlight strong and weak points of the exploitation of Earth observation at all levels. And because of this, I think it will be very important, the discussion that will take place this afternoon. I hope there will be a good involvement of you in the audience, and I really wish you and everybody a very fruitful, interesting global networking forum. So I will leave the floor to Maria Cristina Falvella, that in my agency is in charge of industrial policy and strategy, to introduce the distinguished speakers and to moderate the session. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Giorgio. I was supposed to introduce you, but in fact, was you to introduce me. And thank you also to our speaker, our distinguished guest who accepted on behalf of us this invitation. I want to first introduce them. Professor Daniel Wood from MIT, the chair of the Media Lab. Dr. Joseph Aschbacher, the director of ESA Center for Earth Observation in Esrin. Mrs. Dr. Agnieszka Lużawski from Planet, Senior Director for European Affairs. Dr. Giovanni Silos Labini, who is the chair of Planetech, but today is here as vice chairman of EARSC, the European Association for Remote Sensing Companies. Mr. Omar Valdes from GSA, Officer of Market Development, and Mr. Massimo Comparini, CEO of Egeos, the biggest company for downstream activities in Italy. Thank you to all. I'm very happy to have you here today. This discussion came really timely after the head of delegation panel, which touched exactly the problem of exploitation of downstream activities and the impact on a global level. But of course, they speak as of a agency. Today, we want to offer our auditorium a different point of view, from an industrial point of view, from a societal point of view, and so on. You will discover through the question that we will do. Also, Giorgio Sacoccia introduced some important issue of the impact that the downstream as the space economy as in the society. But going on, I want, because we speak about SME, to start with ISA, with Joseph Aschbacher, asking you, is really an impact for the small contributor of ISA entering the new world of downstream activity, or in general space economy?
So thank you, Maria Cristina, and good afternoon, everyone. So what is the impact of, what are the chances, I would say, of smaller companies in the ESA programs? Actually, ESA programs are geared to attract big countries and small countries, or bigger industry and smaller industry alike. So there's no favorite of either the small ones or the big ones. We really have programs, or we try to put programs together that are attractive for both set of communities. But let me just say a few words, and maybe we hear later on some more details from our EARSC president or vice president or director on the state of the economy. In Europe, the value-adding sector, which for small companies is particularly important, is growing at a rate of 10 to 12% per year. And these are enormous growth figures, and I think many businesses in the world would be quite happy to have growth of that magnitude, of that order of magnitude. But also the sector is growing very nicely. We have just seen recently an EARSC report which was released, and there are quite a number of, an increasing number of employees, but also the turnover is really increasing very, very strongly year by year. One reason being that Copernicus is providing a platform for these companies to grow. Through a free and open data policy, they can really take up these data, create businesses or create opportunities based on this free and open data for society, and society really means all elements of society, from agriculture to forestry to fisheries to climate to security. There are many aspects that are really benefiting from it. So I think really it is a mix of opportunities for big and small companies, but of course our programs are also equally attractive for smaller players. That means smaller industry, but also smaller countries. And this is what we do at the Ministerial Conference, where we have a full portfolio with exactly that.
Thank you, Giovanni. So, Mr. Silos Labini, Earth observation impact, as we have said, an always wider user segment. Also, the report of EARSC highlights this point. Which role does EARSC see for both the SME and the large company at global and European, in the global and European Earth observation panorama?
Thank you again for this invitation to EARSC. I have to thank also Joseph Aschbacher for reporting the data that EARSC provided. Thanks also to support of ESA, we have to say. EARSC counts about 120 associates in Europe, so we have a privileged point of view of what is the status of our industry. I always refer to this status referring to a famous film from Sergio Leone. This was The Good, the Bad and the Guilty. Il buono, il brutto e il cattivo in italiano. Because the good is for sure the extremely good situation of our industry in Europe. and the number was there and has just been reported. The bad is that still a big mission like Copernicus has a very high investment in the upstream part of the mission, 80% is there. Only 20% of the investments are on the downstream part. And of this 20%, less than 10% go to small, medium enterprise. So you have to consider that 90% of our industry are small, medium enterprise. So this is something we have to fix for sure. But the guilty, and so the bad part of the story, is still the public use of this kind of data is very low. And it's terribly low, and still 80% of applications are for government use. There is a 20% that is interesting for commercial, but this is something we have to fix. We have an excellent example in Italy, sorry if I talk about my country, that is this called the Space Economy Plan. This is an idea that completely reverses the approach to building a sustainable upstream on application that can sustain itself.
Thank you for this answer and also for this comparison with the famous film. And this brings me exactly to ask to Planetech, to Mrs. Agnieszka Lushansky. You came from a company which is the major player in Earth observation exploitation in USA. But now you open a site in Europe. How do you see the perspective of the possibility for a company like Planet in Europe, where, of course, boundary conditions for market and also cultural boundary conditions are really different?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking that. Actually, we have been in Europe now for, I would say, 4 years. It started with the acquisition of the Blackbridge company. And we have around 150 people in Europe, so it's not an insignificant presence. And of course, the culture is different, and approach is different, and it's not always easy. It's challenging, I think, to establish yourself as a company that is entering that market that has headquarters somewhere else. Can it compete on the same level as the European companies is not always clear. But we have had a really excellent collaboration with lots of partners in Europe, with European Space Agency, with the European Commission. We're contributing mission to Copernicus and third-party mission to ESA. So it's definitely a market of huge potential, particularly with the Copernicus program, which is really unprecedented. I mean, there's nothing like that in the world. And be part of that ecosystem is really important for us, because at Planet in particular, we're just not looking at making profits, but about making a change. And we think Copernicus is doing that, and we think combining public and private efforts, we can really make a change. And now, you know, we hear about climate change and all these different problems, and working together, we can fix it. I just want to mention to the sound people over there if they can maybe fix it a little bit, the sound here, because it's, the echo is, yeah. Thank you.
Perhaps they do not listen so strong, the echo, as us here, but it's better to fix. And so you are convinced both that the market of Earth observation is increasing. Is increasing slowly, that perhaps telecommunication, but it will go on. And this brings me to GSA, to Mr. Valdes, because GSA has a challenge role for the next year, we know, and I want to ask you which is the GSA vision for the evolution of the system of systems, and which role could the new USPA play in the next year?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for the question. Yeah. So first, I will start by just very short introduction of our GSA, because the other day I was walking through Washington. I found out that there was a GSA in the United States. So I will explain first that the GSA in Europe is the European GNSS agency. We are the agency in charge of the of EGNOS and Galileo. And we are roughly 170 people. We are based in Prague, and yeah, we are ensuring the operations of the system. So within the system of systems, I think that the role of the agency, the current role of the agency and on the future role of the agency will stay very similar, which is what we try to do is to bring the space, to link the space with the user needs. Yeah, meaning that we try to make that the systems answer to the needs of the users. Yeah, and so in order to do so, yeah, we have put in place a methodology, yeah, that it's based on basically on more than 15 years of performing this for Galileo and EGNOS, and and that has given sound results. This methodology is based on 3 pillars. Yeah? One is the market knowledge, which is basically knowing what the market wants, and we reflect this in the reports that we publish. One of them, the GNSS market report that we just published the last week. We have as well the reports on user needs and requirements that were published for the first time last year, and they were updated this year as well. And this market knowledge, what we try to do is to go to understand the demand of the services. Then resulting of this, we go to the demand support, what we call the demand support, which is to try to identify how to address the needs of that market with the systems that we have, with the system of systems that we have. And then on the third pillar is the offer creation, which is basically the funding that we manage for programs of research and development for fostering this, for fostering the adoption of the systems. And here I would like to address something that Giovanni mentioned. Yeah, that you mentioned that there is a lot of funding for big companies, for large players. In our case, it's completely different. Most of the funding that we allocate for research and development goes to SMEs. Yeah. And so it's because we are really interested on the development of the services. So in the light of this, of all this, and so this methodology has given some sound achievements in the world of GNSS. Yeah? For EGNOS, for example, for EGNOS, in the case of EGNOS, for agriculture, for farmers, yeah, it has become one of the key tools for farmers in Europe for precision farming and for improving yields. And nearly 1 billion devices are capable now of tracking Galileo. So because of these achievements, it's the European regulators have decided to create in the new regulation that is being put together, where the EUSPA will come up, are being mandated to expand this methodology to other elements of the European space program, namely GovSatcom for communication of government agencies, and not Copernicus, yeah, which is basically the most relevant system in this talk. And then, so the idea is that we will, concerning the offer creation, we will take over the management of the downstream R&D funding for Copernicus, and we will try to put in place a similar scheme that we have put together that has been very successful for EGNOS and Galileo. Yeah.
Thank you. Massimo Comparini, from the point of view of EGEOS, so it seems that the new business model is more based on information, on idea, that really on Earth observation data. What do you think?
I think the business model of our domain, of our industry, is changing and is fast changing. Here on stage, we have 2 examples of how we are going to generate huge amount of data. I mean, Joseph represents the space agency, and of course, together with Galileo, Copernicus is the most important flagship program. And the richness, the variety, and the quantity of data that the sensors, the sentinels, are already generating, we generate in the past and in the future, it's absolutely an element what to do with all those data. Agnieszka, on the other hand, it's maybe the best paradigm of new space. I mean, huge amount of data, different characteristics, different performance on the single sensor, but with the capability to monitor what happens on the Earth quite continuously. So I think that the challenge is to understand how this business is changing. It's no more to deliver an optical image, a radar image, multispectral image. It's really to extract the information where, you know, I was used to design satellites. So for me, the next generation will be a radar with a high resolution, high spatial resolution. Today, the game is different. Of course, the progress of a sensor is still on the performance of the single sensor, but it's also in the time, revisit time, the temporal resolution. So I don't think that it's just EGEOS. I think that it's our domain, it's our industry that must ask how we can derive useful information for a number of activities. I know yesterday there was a very interesting section on the SDGs, so how to extract information about the planet dynamic will help those kind of stuff, but also from economic perspective. I mean, business intelligence, to be honest, 5 years ago, we don't have a clear dimension of what is the value of the market for a business intelligence. Today, through those sensors, to extract those information, we have a raising attention to new communities, insurance community, risk community, financial community. So really, I think the challenge is to understand that, of course, the quality of the data in different dimensions, spatial resolution and temporal resolution will be fundamental, but then it's fundamental to understand how we can feed innovation in order to extract information and how, let's say, space-related company will defend and develop their position. It's not just a question of IT, it's not just a question of information technologies. We will see the convergence of IT and this industry, but we need to keep the pace of the innovation in order to not be completely displaced by the pure IT companies.
Thank you for this analysis. It's exactly what I would expect to listen from our distinguished speaker. And this brings me to Professor Wood, because it seems that the space change society and Earth observation application are really changing the way of perceive society. So my question is really the space economy a flywheel for developing countries, or is it just a tool to solve a logistic issue?
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be with all of you, and I just want to appreciate the Italian community for inviting me to join. Since I visited in 2018, I had a chance to really interact with many people and have opportunities to dialogue with you, so thank you. I am the director of the Space Enabled Research Group, which is an academic research group at MIT's Media Lab. And we are composed of 9 graduate students, several researchers, and our mission is to advance justice in Earth's complex systems using designs enabled by space. Now, justice for us has 2 ideas that relate directly back to this discussion. The first concept is simply that space belongs to everyone, and especially the capabilities for satellite services and Earth observation, positioning, and communication are truly global in their impact. And by that, we would hope that people from all countries, no matter where they live, could benefit from space technology in a way that supports them. The second, and you briefly mentioned just now, the Sustainable Development Goals. So when we ask what it means to advance justice, we're asking how can we use space technology to support sustainable development as defined by the global goals, as well as defined by development leaders at the international and national level. So a lot of the work our team does is to ask leaders at international organizations and national governments and local and regional leaders, such as entrepreneurs, how they are trying to meet the sustainable development goals and where they see opportunities, but sometimes frustrations, to apply satellite Earth observation, positioning, and communication systems. I can highlight just a few examples, and my team will present several talks this week where you can hear more about our work. We are actively designing systems that apply Earth observation, often with support of GNSS services, in countries such as Benin and Ghana, as well as India and Brazil. So if you have a chance, you can come see my colleague Prathima talk about her work collaborating with indigenous communities to listen to their cultural knowledge and capture it with geo-referenced digital storytelling. That'll be coming up on this coming week, on the 25th. A colleague of mine, who's one of the students in our group, Ufoma of Imhara, she'll share right here in the Next Generation Plenary work we're doing in Benin with a local company. They're addressing invasive plants, and thanks to funding from NASA's Applied Sciences team, thank you, Lawrence, who's here, cheers. So thanks to that, we have a chance to work both with teams in Benin and in Ghana to ask them how do they want to develop systems that can answer local questions. And I appreciated the example from our colleagues at the European GSA, saying that there's a process we have to figure out of how to listen to community leaders as they define what they really want from these space systems. Generally, we could say, actually, there's excellent data from Planet and Sentinel that I'm using regularly, and we can find answers to questions that we think are interesting, but that is not actually meeting needs. We're not meeting a need until the local woman who gets caught in her boat by an invasive plant, until she understands how to plan her day better and has the information she wants. So I ask my local partners, and we help understand what those needs are from the local scale. And then that way can support development in developing countries.
So this shows exactly how social and economic challenges cross each other in the new space economy. And so let me ask Agnieszka a quick look on the US market. US has a big tradition, and so let me say it's close to saturation. What do you think? Is it will be able to reinvent itself, or it will look to different continent where there is still a lot to do in this field?
Well, I think it is reinventing itself already. This is why you have this concept of new space, that's something that the business is being done in a very different way that it used to be done traditionally speaking. So you have companies in Earth observation like Planet, but you also have different launch companies and in different areas. So so I think it's not quite saturated, especially when it comes to what Massimo was talking about markets. With Earth observation, we're just scratching the surface of what really Earth observation can deliver, and what kind of markets it can really find as clients. So it's not just about the usual suspects, which was the government and the agriculture and perhaps the environment, but it's in oil and gas and insurance and urban planning and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we are just starting to figure out the full potential. But in terms of looking at other markets, of course, I mean, we are looking at space globally. So as Danielle said, I mean, it belongs to everyone. So we're not focusing on US, we're focusing on the world. And this is also why we are in Europe, because we are strong believers in building an ecosystem, global ecosystem, that can really address world's problems. So that will not happen in the US only. And we cannot be looking we're looking at the world market. So it's definitely, there's still a lot of work to do. And I think that us having an experience in Europe now and working with industry there and working with governments there, it's really also broadening our horizons, really what can be done and what capabilities are there. Because like I said, the space journey does not end in the US for sure.
Okay, and Joseph Schwager. So we are close to the ministerial now, and everybody knows it, so we cannot hide this point. But to prepare the best new space economy habitat, what do you think we need more? More satellite or more downstream and related space application? You have both in Earth observation, so it's your choice.
That's a very tricky question, Maria Cristina, and I think you cannot answer it one way or the other, because you need both. If you don't have satellites, you will not get downstream services, and if you don't have downstream services, there's no need for satellites, and they're really mutually dependent. But I really liked what Danielle was saying just before, because all this information, all these satellites we are developing are for common good. And the common good is expressed either in the form of sustainable development goals, or agricultural information, or fisheries information, or information for security, or for disaster management. It's really information that is going downstream to the people. And there, I think this is this interdependence. So what we really need to look at is, and this is also the basis of our ministerial proposal is to have an end-to-end system approach, to have obviously satellites on one side, and we have a very clear plan of what satellites are needed in the next future to address requirements expressed by the users, by the citizens of Europe or worldwide, but then also make sure that you have this middle layer, which is the data processing, data access part, and obviously the use of these data in the sense of converting data into information, which is then really used by citizens and by decision makers and by various people. And I think this is quite important to not separate, say, the downstream part from the upstream or vice versa, because the moment you do that, you're losing the quality of an integrated service. And I think that is what we require. And our proposal is very much in this direction to make sure that we have the science, the technology well connected and well talking to each other.
Thanks. Do you want to intervene? Oh, please. You want to react?
If you don't mind, I appreciate a chance to comment on that. One of the ways we've been thinking about that as a research activity and a practical one comes from one of my research activities in Brazil. Our question is, how can we better understand all of these things as an integrated question? We are building a modeling tool that will help a team first ask what would they like to know about the environment, what's changing. For example, where is there more growth of mangroves? Second, to ask what the impact is on society. So we want a related model or evaluation tool to ask how people are affected. The third thing we should ask is what decisions is some leader making or are people making? Are we making a zoning decision, or are we making some plan for intervention of poverty? And the third question would be what technology is going to help us improve decision making? So one of our approaches is to design integrated models that can cover all of these at once. We often have great models for these, but as separate tools. So we're asking how we can make it easier to, instead of designing an application on this side and a satellite on this side, to see them designed actually as an integrated process, but with an end user who has a decision to make somewhere in the loop. And so it's just what you've said.
Thank you. Thank you. Giovanni, you invented the space stream concept that exactly match this discussion. So we know some more about this.
No, yes, unfortunately I don't trademark it yet, this name, so I lose an opportunity to make money, but it's very close to what is said around here. There is the new space emerging concept that is disruptive in some way. Will change the value chain in Earth observation in a very deep way. And I have to say that this concept was very well intercepted by the PhilLab in Estrin. That was a first exercise to put together the space part and the downstream part in what is a space stream. What is disrupting the space? First, we have data are commoditized. We have an enormous quantity of data. Secondly, onboard capability are growing very fast. So what we are normally doing the downstream happens upstream. And also on the ground, the high performance computing is a commodity nowadays. And far more important, I am in the business of Earth observation since more than 30 years. And we always talk about user-centered design. Well, we are a new emerging user, that are the machine. This will change dramatically how our system works. And if our industry don't adapt to this, the risk is that to be killed from the value chain, like happened to Kodak or to other famous company, not seeing the change in the value chain. So the space stream is this, and this resolves a big part of the discussion about upstream and downstream, because it's a continuous stream of data.
Thank you. Thank you. Massimo, Mr. Comparini, the artificial intelligence has a tremendous impact, especially in Earth observation domain, because you can immediately connect a lot of information that bring you to have efficient, groundbreaking, let me say, products.
Yeah, I think that, as I said before, we need to extract more and more information about from this huge amount of data. So now, you know, artificial intelligence, it's a kind of buzzword. If you don't talk about artificial intelligence, you are not attractive enough. We need to go a little bit more in depth to understand what we are talking about. But it's a fact that through the capability with advanced algorithms, deep learning, machine learning, and even AI-driven or AI-inspired algorithms, here we have the possibility to derive the information for the different applications that we're talking about. And I think this is really part of the capturing process of the change in the value chain that Giovanni was talking about. If our company are not fast enough and innovative enough to understand that, it will be really complex to take the challenge. I think that, okay, we are in US. I think that Europe, through the Commission, through European Space Agency, has done remarkable things in the last years. And I think that the support to our capability to invest our own money in this domain, it will be fundamental for the raise of the competition in the coming years. In this respect, I don't think that any company, also the big company alone, can take the challenge. I think the cooperation with the academia, the scientific institution will be fundamental. And I think that if we are able to do that, we can really provide an unmatched level of information to take the challenge of the planet. SDG, mega trends like agriculture. I mean, we mentioned before the risk insurance, financial, but today I think the vast majority of applications where we are using EO data use AI-driven algorithms to understand how we can have a more productive and more sustainable agriculture. So I really think that this is the challenge that we have, and I believe that we need to go through to a real partnership across the value chain, innovative startups, academia, big companies.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for these considerations. And I go back to Mr. Valdes about the future of USPA. You just highlight that in the future, USPA will operate with the interconnected information, both navigation and Earth observation. But considering the enormous impact of Copernicus and considering the rate of increasing of interest of business focused on Earth observation, how do you plan to cope with the necessary stimulus for demand for Earth observation data that are really a new word also for experts in navigation as you are?
So, as I mentioned before, we have a methodology based already on 3 pillars that it has made its proof in GNSS. So for example, Agnieszka said something very interesting before. She said that, for example, for Earth observation, agriculture is, you call them a usual suspect, yeah, because it's something obvious for Earth observation. In the case of GNSS, agriculture was not obvious at all, yeah, because we had this fantastic system called EGNOS, which is a European equivalent of WAAS, the GPS augmentation system, that was designed for aviation. Yeah, and then after having this system in place, we discovered that it could be interesting for farmers as well. So then what we did is, this was the part of market knowledge that I mentioned before. Then we went to the prospectors, to the companies to those that can integrate these solutions into their devices, and we spoke to them. And for them, they saw that the implementation of these solutions was relatively easy. Yeah. And so they started commercializing products, GNSS receivers for tractors that were using EGNOS to reduce the accuracy from 7 meters to half a meter, yeah, the horizontal accuracy. And so it worked out. And so we went from having a system that was not intended for agriculture to have, by last year, about 500,000 shipments of EGNOS-enabled receivers for agriculture, and with a projection for roughly 2 million shipments per year in 10 years for this market. So if we do this, if we discover new needs, I think we can create these new applications for the Earth observation as well. Yeah. So in the case of Copernicus, for example, land management is an obvious application, and so integrating, and so going looking for application developers or device developers, you name it. I mean, in this case, we have to find out what is the value chain, yeah, and then go to this value chain and try to make them use the solutions that are being provided, yeah. And then how we have done this for GNSS, and this is something that we are planning as well to do for Copernicus, is that we gather the users in an assembly, yeah, periodically, and we question them, we poke them to see what they need from the systems, and so we try to adapt the systems and the functionalities of the systems to what the users need, yeah? And so we try to approach the system towards the needs of the users, yeah? So that the data that they are getting will be meaningful for their needs, and not only to make the end-to-end solution that was mentioned before. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Professor Wood, discussing seems that the new space economy is an asset also for non-space users, and perhaps can be really the right asset for economic development and social justice. What do you think?
Thank you so much for asking about economic development and social justice. I was emailing you earlier because I was in Boston this morning to teach my class. The class is called Can Space-Enabled Designs Advance Justice and Development? And so I teach engineering students, students from urban studies, and from across MIT. We first read a lot of history about the past 500 years or so and the kind of journey to our current global economy. We really explain why we need the Sustainable Development Goals. It's because our current economic approach has created a vast wealth inequality across different communities. So my team works particularly with communities that traditionally have experienced some form of mistreatment or discrimination that has led to them currently having economic or other challenges. And we ask them how they'd like to use this kind of information, these services. And the question we want to ask is, can they use the power of knowledge about your environment, about positioning and mapping, to actually advance their state as a community, not just to solve today's problems, but to address the longer-term injustices they faced. I think in many ways, I believe strongly it's the right thing to do, but also it's not a simple thing, which is why we use the concept of complex systems to help us think. It's not that we're going to have a quick fix where once you have the data, you solve the problem. It's more asking, as communities build educational systems, they build business models, and they work to change policies on the government scale, as all those come together in our work in places like Benin and Ghana and Brazil, working with indigenous farmers and communities in India, we are gradually seeing that these are long-term processes of social change, but the technology can be a key tool in which local communities, driven by entrepreneurs and scientists and policymakers, can change their reality, and part of it is through the space information and services.
Thank you. Do you want to react first? Please.
Not to react, but to complement something, because I really liked what I hear. But I think everyone agrees that today's wealth of data which are coming either from Copernicus or from Planet or from other missions is great and can add a lot to the value of society. But I think we should not underestimate the effort that is required to get there to make these data usable. And I'm not only saying to develop algorithms to process level 2 data, for example, but really to create a user community, to make them understand, to work with the users, to understand what is the value for them, because many of them need to change the way of working, the way how their business is set up, or the way their governmental organization is set up to collect information. And I'm saying this because we have gone through this in Europe, I'm not saying painfully, but through a long and tedious process, which took more than 10 years to build up services, which today are the big Copernicus services, but we started actually 15 years ago in order to build up the community and make sure that the community which is the users, the real users, not the proxy users, but the real users are involved in the data. And then those users give you feedback, us to the space people, to design the next satellite in order to understand what they didn't like or what they would like to have improved in order to really generate the next question. I think this is an effort we should not underestimate to prepare the user for new missions, for new data, and make sure that they are properly incorporated and involved in creating value. And this is the topic of this panel here, to create really the opportunities which we are seeing here. But this is a major effort which is not to be underestimated. It doesn't happen by its own.
Yes, thank you. And it seems that the good formula to realize all this is exactly to join institutions, companies, academia, different point of view. We touch a lot of points, but I want to close this GNF with a very quick tour de table, let me say, with just one word: inspiration. I didn't listen inspiration, but I think that is important, both for the young generation to push them to work in the sector, but also for the oldest one, because they have to change their mind. And they have to really interact and make a concrete habitat in which there are cross-correlation of information and idea to change the paradigm in practice. What do you think? Go not in order, as you prefer.
I just want to tell a short story. We are doing field work on a lake in Benin, and we want to test a drone to see if we can collect data about invasive plants and mangrove growth. And I don't speak French, which is the dominant language, or the local languages of the different communities, but kids come by every time we fly the drones and just stand around us and look when the drone takes off and look at the screen. And we are not communicating with words, but they are certainly inspired. What I'm asking is, will they have the opportunity to build their own drones in the future? How can we make the opportunities open to them so that their education and their job plans can let them be doing this when they are older?
I think inspiration is clear, and everyone would agree that this is extremely important, and space can do a lot to inspire people. We've heard it this morning in the opening session. If you see the big dreams of going to other planets, and this is simply inspiring. I think many of us, including myself, we have been inspired by the moon landing. I think this really was shaping my career, if I may say, and going into space. But one thing that goes with inspiration is innovation. And innovation, I think, is at the core of moving forward. And I'd like to recall what Massimo was saying before about Kodak. Why did Kodak fail at the end of the day? Because they missed the chance to innovate and to come with new products, because the market was changing and the requirements were changing. And I think this is the challenge we have, to innovate. And therefore, I'm really happy to see Agnieszka sitting next to me, who is really pushing the frontier of innovation. Ourselves, we are trying to work extremely well with new space companies, new technologies, call it AI, call it machine learning, call it hubs, small sats and constellations. Because if you stop innovating, then you're getting stuck and you're not inspiring any new generation.
Agnieszka, please.
Thank you. I mean, I'm very happy you asked that question, because I am a strong believer in inspiration, and not just inspiration, but passion for doing what we do. And I think our sector is so unique in that way that everybody who works in that sector is passionate about that. It's not just your 9-to-5 job. It's we are all a little bit crazy, but in a good way, you know. And I think this is what gives me this job, makes me happy about this job. And I think coming to things like this event, where you're meeting so many passionate people and hearing so many different stories. You know, I'm working on Earth observation, but you know, listening about moon landing today and launchers is just you still get this kind of wow factor, and I need to hear that from time to time. Just to know that there's so many things that are happening, innovation is happening, and things are moving forward. I think that is extremely important, and I think when you've mentioned young people, it's important that we keep them inspired, but we also give them opportunities to keep that fire going. Because I think everybody, when they're young, they get super excited about space, and then it just kind of sometimes dies out because they don't see, well, there's nothing I can do with that. So I've been very fortunate. Pretty much everybody on this panel, I mean, I just met Omar today, but everybody else has, you've all been inspiration to me in different facets of my career, and I'm very fortunate that I get to interact with you and be on this panel. So hopefully we can I want to also pay it forward to the next guy or next girl and be inspiration to them so we can continue this mission.
Thank you. Giovanni, inspiration for
Yes,
the space economy.
And I was really impressed. Last week we have an hackathon. Bari is a very small town in the very deep south of Italy with more than 69 youngsters participating to develop a new product from Envisat, from Copernicus. My age came out, and it was very impressive because you see, there was also a team of very young boys from mid-school, no more than 18 years, and they produce a very interesting new way to use the data for different applications. So this is a very important part of our business that we have to play, because when we talk about the Internet of Things, that's a very nice thing. Sorry for the risk is that space can be marginalized, can be a part of different technologies that contribute to that. While space is very important because give the what, the when, and also the how of what happened. And this is something that we have to transmit, I believe.
Thank you. Mr. Valles, GSA is famous to be built on inspiration and brave.
Yes, so just a few days ago, I had an interview with my health department, and she asked me, how do you define yourself? And I just told her, a space freak, yeah? Because that's what I mean, as I said, we are driven all here for passion. And so I think inspiration is really important, yeah, to show people, I mean, to really show other people what can be done, yeah, and what has been done and what can be done, and to bring the new ideas into the field. And for example, I mean, speaking about developing countries, there is something that is important, I mean, to make some change of mindset, because many people from developing countries that I have met, they think that they cannot do this, they cannot do that, because we don't have a satellite in orbit, yeah? And it's like, no, you don't need to have a satellite in orbit, yeah? Someone else has already done it, yeah? You can use that data, and use it and for your own need. And I think that is something that we need really to foster, yeah? To help others to actually raise the level of everyone, yeah?
Thank you, Massimo.
Last and not least, it's difficult space for me is inspiration by definition. Like Joseph recalled before, when I was a little boy in the 60s, of course, the inspiration was, okay, how space contribute to know the universe, our system. Today, and I'm really lucky because I'm an industrialist, so sometimes I need to escape from the boring challenge quarter by quarter to give result to my shareholders. So, like innovation, you have different waves of inspirations. And today I'm lucky because I have the inspiration to understand how space technologies can make more sustainable the only planet that we have, the Earth, which is a completely different dimension. Of course, still, I mean, in a conference like today, we love to see the technologies to go to Mars and behind, but it's also, in my mind, really inspirational to understand how we can contribute to have a sustainable Earth.
So inspiration works also for the oldest generation, because if we remember the first man on the moon, we are part of the oldest generation. Thank you. So I want to thank you all for this interesting discussion, for the outputs that you bring to our public too. And to thank you, you will find in your little bag to inspire you an image of Washington taken by our Earth observation satellite that will remember you this day, this discussion. Thank you all and for this discussion and for your presence here. Thank you.